All right. Welcome back to a quick review. Algebra 1, Chapter 1, Lesson X. Our replacement set here is 2, 4, 5, and 6. We are going to start with 1-2. That is the order of operations. There are a couple things I wanted to review here. So we have, let's see, an expression. 2c to the third minus ab over 4. All right, we are given a is 12, b is equal to 9, and c is equal to 4. Okay, first thing to note, this expression right here, the exponent 3 applies only to the c, not to the 2. This is not 2c times 2c times 2c. Okay, 2c to the third power is not the same as 2c to the third power. This is 3 times the parentheses, whereas this is 3 times the variable. Okay, big difference. Note that. Also, when you replace a variable with a value, put it in parentheses. All right. So, let's see. We have c is 4. 2 times 4 to the third power minus. Okay, careful here. I've seen this before. I don't want to see it again. A is 12, B is 9. That is not 129. AB means A times B. Okay, this is a multiplication. That means 12 times 9. When you replace a variable with a value, put it in parentheses. Now we have 4 to the third power, so that's 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. So we have 2 times 64. Minus 9 times 12, I'll do the distributive property here. 9 times 10 is 90, 9 times 2 is 18. So that's 108 over 4. Remember here, we have, let me separate this slightly. There we go. Over 4. And the fraction bar, remember, is a grouping symbol. That means do what's on one side before you do the division. So we first have to do 2 times 64, which is 128. 128 minus 108 divided by 4. And that gives us 20 over 4, which is 5. Always simplify your fractions. Top divided by bottom. 20 divided by 4. Alright, that was from Chapter 1-2, Order of Operations, and Simplifying Expressions. Okay, Section 1-4, Distributive Property. A couple of things I want to look at with you here. Negative 3a times 2a minus 6. We can't combine what's in parentheses here. So we take what's outside the parentheses, the negative 3a, and multiply with everything inside. Okay, so we do negative 3 times 2a. Negative 3a times 2a is negative 6a squared. Careful here. A times a gives me a squared. Now I'll multiply the negative 3a with, careful, this is a negative 6. Negative times a negative is a positive. Plus 3 times 6 is 18. And there's also an a. Notice if they are unlike terms in the parentheses, they will be unlike terms after you do distributive property. Alright, next problem, let's look at this. 4 times 6p plus 2q minus 2p. You could do this two ways. You can either simplify within the parentheses first. We've got 6p and minus 2p here. So 6p minus 2p could give me 4p inside the parentheses times 4 would be 16. Or I choose to do distributive property with what's outside the parentheses with everything inside. I get the same result. 4 times 6, 24p. 4 times 2q is 8q. Minus 4 times 2p is 8p. Now, combine like terms. We've got 24p and 8p. Now, careful. The sign in front of the number goes with the number. When I circle that, I'm including the negative sign. So now when I combine these two, that gives me 16p plus 8q. I mentioned in class, we start with the greatest exponent first, the term with the greatest exponent, and then to the least exponent. If you have different variables, you go in alphabetical order. So p, then q. We can't combine these two. This is not 24pq. Okay? Different variable, unlike terms. All right. Next, chapter 1.5. Let's look at this one. 1/4 times x plus 2 equals 5/6. All right. Now, we have fractions here. I don't know many people who enjoy working with fractions, and there's a trick to get rid of them. Notice this is a multiplication on this side, and here there's only one fraction. So, this side's being divided by 4, this side's being divided by 6. A common denominator between the two would be 12. 4 goes into 12, and 6 goes into 12. So I'm going to multiply each side by a common denominator. If this was just 4, I would just multiply each side by 4 if the 6 was a 4 here. But we have two different denominators, so I'm going to multiply by a common denominator, and that way I can simplify and cancel that out. When I simplify on this side, 12 and 4 can be simplified. Divide by 4, we get 3 here. Divide by 6, we get 2 there. Now I have 3 times 1 is 3, times x plus 2 equals 5 times 2 is 10. Now we can do distributive property here. Then I get 3x plus 2 is equal to 10. To subtract 2 from each side. This cancels out. 3x is equal to 8. And then divide by 3 on each side. And x is equal to 8/3. Or 3 goes into 8 twice. So simplify that down to 2 and 2/3. There we go. All right. Then dealing with a fraction, if you have a variable in a fraction. So we have 3 over a minus 2 is equal to 4. To get rid of this denominator, we're going to multiply each side by the denominator. Okay, so we'll take the entire denominator and multiply each side by that denominator. That's how we get rid of fractions. So that cancels out the denominator here. Then we're left with 3 equals 4 times a minus 2. Distributive property. And we get 3 equals 4a minus 8. Add 8 to each side. We get 11 equals 4a, and now divide by 4 on each side. We get a equals 11 fourths, or 4 goes into 11 two times, with a remainder of 2 3/4. Okay. One last thing, domain and range. When determining domain and range, remember domain are all the x values, so we're looking at the first ones here. The thing is, if any of these values repeats, we're not going to list that. I want to know what numbers are in the domain. -1 is there, 1 is there, and 2. I've already said 2 is in the domain, so I don't have to say that 2 is in the domain again. Okay, we don't list that a second time. All right, same thing as in the range. In the range, we have a 1 in the range. I don't have to say that there is a 1 in the range. I've already said there's a 1 in the range. Okay, so we don't list it twice. 1, 3, and 5. So neither domain nor range, we list the repeating numbers. Now it's something different when we're looking to determine is it a function or not. Okay, that's where we look at the domain and see do any numbers repeat. But we don't list them in either domain or range. And that was today's little review. See you tomorrow.